Morning, everyone. I hope you're all good, happy, or getting there. Today, I want to have as a topic book smarts versus learned experience. And I'm sure some of you have kind of been hearing this conversation already if you watch a lot of Raza YouTube channels. In particular, is book smarts. Can you learn more from someone who's telling you out of book smarts, or can you learn more from someone who's telling you from lived experience? The problem with that is that it implies a competition. And it's a comparison of apples to oranges. See, I'll give you my story. I had a friend, and she would often invite me and my family to her home to have dinner with her family and other friends. And we'd go, and we were cool. And one day she says, you don't ever invite me to your house. I feel like you're hiding something. And I said, yeah, you don't want to know. And she says, honestly, I feel like you're hiding something. And I was able to tell her what I was hiding. Not because I had lived it, but because I read it in a book. See, literature, people who read literature are trying to understand the human condition. Just because you lived something doesn't mean you understand the human condition. You may not reflect on your life. You may not even know yourself. You may not know why you do things. You may be a reaction. Little more than a cow who just wants to eat and be comfortable, or a sea cucumber that if you poke, reacts as you expect it to react. There's no thought. It just reacts without thinking. In high society, low society, white society, that society, both of these kinds of people exist. So because I read a book, my neighbor had asked me to write an essay for him. And so I wrote an essay for him on the children of alcoholics. And I read that people who had alcoholic parents often didn't know what to expect when they were coming home. It was a surprise. And in this book, I read my life experience that I had never thought about. I was like, you're right. I didn't bring people home when I was little because I didn't know if my dad would be passed out on my lawn, peed on himself, fighting with my mom, trying to hit her and she's locked in the bathroom. I never knew what I was going to come home to. I always had this sense of doom because of that. Something bad was always around the corner because he was unpredictable. He might be sober one day eating and just grumpy, or he might be on a fucking tirade drunk with his gun out. You never fucking knew. So I learned not to invite people over. The people that did come over were the people who had the same exact shit going on at their house or were causing it at their house. Those were the only ones that came over. Anyone outside of that world, I wouldn't invite because I was ashamed of it. I couldn't bring people from nice society to my house to see my dad waving a gun around, drunk, fucking eyes like they don't even see you. They're just wild and shit. And because of that, I never had people to my house that weren't also in that crazy life, like, you know, had the same kind of household. And I told her, yeah, I am hiding something. You know, I'm hiding my dad. This is how it was. And so I learned to never invite people over. And then one day for my birthday, a whole bunch of people came over, and she was like, Dad, you got a nice house, everything, like why don't you have people? It's like, it's suited for entertaining. And I was like, yeah, I already told you, you know, it's just ingrained in me because of this. Separately, when I took a human development course, and there were different theories on human development, one including the 7 stages of human development. And each stage builds upon the former. And the first stage was hope versus hopeless. Tupac was well educated. You know, motherfucker was even a ballerina at one point, in case you didn't know. And so when he would say, I'm hopeless, he understands it from the context of human development theory. And so the hope versus hopeless, if you were hopeless, that meant you had an inability to trust. Homies would get the tattoo, sometimes with the Chinese symbol, trust no one, trust no man. That meant you were hopeless. And if you were hopeless, all the other stages that built upon that were flawed. One is industry. Are you productive? Are you not productive? I don't remember them all, but it would serve me well to pick up a textbook and read about them again, because it helped me to understand myself more than I ever could alone with just my learned experience. The halls of literature, all those books are about the human experience. And so amongst the great thinkers, in my opinion, is Friedrich Nietzsche. And he often talked about like the herd mentality and people wanting to believe their illusions more than know the truth. And I think that a lot of folks, you know, be a political party, a group dedicated to causing trouble, a tribe, they want to believe things about themselves that make them feel good, that make them, maybe it's not even about feeling better than someone else. Maybe it's just about not feeling inferior to someone else, to feeling like you have something to offer. And I think a lot of times for people, their lived experience is one of the few things they believe they have to offer. Look, I'm an expert in this because I lived it. I've seen people participate in government processes and feel and believe that they're experts on racism because they meet the definition of a protected class who has experienced racism. But oftentimes, all of them are blind to the racism at a much higher level, where they're being manipulated into believing they're resolving racism, but actually promoting it. An example would be, I went to a meeting once, and everybody was talking about how much outreach and engagement they were creating in these communities to help them. One was Echo Park. And this group that promotes electricity said, the community group from this small number to this bigger number, and, we're hoping to get infrastructure in there and what have you. And everybody was happy, like, yay, they grew this thing, they're helping this poor community. And so I asked them two questions that kind of shook it all up. I said, are those people that were added to the group the residents that lived there a long time, or the newer residents? And they said the newer residents. And then I said, what happened to the old residents that were part of the group? And they said, they went away. We don't know what happened, but we're doing a lot of good work in this poor community. In reality, they were helping to accelerate the poor folks getting pushed out, because they weren't going to be able to afford the things that were being brought in to help them. So people want to believe. And I think when your lived experience is one of the very few things you have to offer, and someone comes along who thinks they know more about it than you, or maybe they don't think they know more about it than you. Maybe you think they know more about it than you, and you feel threatened, and you have to defend one of the few things you have left. I think that folks, in wanting to believe they're special, fail to see how common they really are. How much in common they have with all kinds of other people who aren't like them in a lot of ways, but in other ways are. You could have someone who is pro-police and a fervent political party loyalist, and someone who has nothing to do with politics in the streets representing their neighborhood, and find a lot of common reasons for why they are the way they are. Even if, and they're as different as possible, but there's a lot of common threads that makes them align with ideologies and beliefs. So that's my take on it. I think that both have something to offer. Trying to compete to see which one is better is a frivolous conversation, because it all depends on the individual. A person who lives their life without ever reflecting on it, despite having lived it, might know less than someone who's constantly reflecting on life and can find correlations in why they do things and why other people do things. And so if you can, if you have this lived experience, whatever it may be, it doesn't have to be, a victim of abuse, or teenage years spent in juvenile halls and in camps and what have you. Whatever it is, literature will help you understand why you do the things you do much better than you can know on your own. Because literature is tapping into centuries of the human experience. You and me ain't that special. Someone has probably lived a life similar to ours. and someone has helped them understand it. I'm serious, man. It's you pick up some books, you read some literature, or even textbooks on human development. Go read Piaget, Piaget, and you'll learn about yourself. Like, you really will. So that said, that's my take on it. Try to keep it high level, philosophical, and meaningful. Hope you have a good one.